the sheep of his hand. So here in Psalm 95, we see a beautiful progression of how we are to enter into worship. And this is mirroring the way temples used to be built in the Old Testament. That is a picture of the temple that was built in Solomon's time. And here we see that there are, various areas of the temple. We have got first on the outside, the outer court, and then the inner court, and then right in the center, we have the Holy of Holies, where God's presence is supposed to be. And that's the way the temples were designed in the Old Testament. So, if we take this temple and we put it into the way that has been shown to us in Psalm 95, we see first that we need to enter in through the gates of thanksgiving. So the only way into God's presence is we cannot go straight into God's presence by saying, God, here I am. No, the first thing that we need to do is that we need to enter in through the gates of thanksgiving. Psalm 95 verse 2 says, let us come before his presence with thanksgiving. Let us shout joyfully to him with psalms. And we'll be learning about this over the next 3 days, but when it says, let us shout joyfully to him, it means, let us shout joyfully to him. It does not mean, there's a place and time for meditation and all that. But when we're coming into God's presence, we need to do it and shout joyfully. And then we need to go from the gates of thanksgivings into the courts of praise. And Psalm 95 verse 3 to 5 says, for the Lord is a great God, the great King above all gods. In his hands are the deep places of the earth, the heights of the hills are his also. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. So we need to go through the gates of thanksgiving, into the gates, through the courts of praise, and then the presence of God is found in the inner sanctuary when we hit verse 6. Oh, come, let us bow down, let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. And I said this before, the key job of the worship team and everybody who's involved in worship is to help the church enter into the manifest presence of God. God was very, very particular about the design of his temple. So we cannot desecrate this temple by worshipping any other idols here. Because when Israel did that, the presence of God left the Holy of Holies. And we have to remember that whatever we do on the pulpit up here has to come from in here, that we are seekers of God's presence. Because if we are up here as a worship leader, it is so easy to turn around and go, how am I sounding? How am I looking? How am I playing today? And then go to after the service to someone, today's worship very good, huh? We have to be careful that the object of our worship doesn't move from God onto ourselves. When Israel did that, the presence of God left the Holy of Holies. And we need to keep our eyes focused on that. So, at the end of it, the heart of the matter is really the matter of our heart. Romans 10:10 says that, for it is with your heart that you believe and are justified. It is with your mouth that you confess and are saved. It is with the heart that we believe. It is not with the mind that we believe as much as our heart. It's important that our mind is engaged when we are engaging scripture or people or understanding theology. It is not by our works that we are saved. It is by our heart and our heart condition that men believe. I want to share with you a story that comes from 1 Samuel chapter 7. There was the Ark of the Covenant, and it had been and it was in this place called Kiriath Jearim. And people were mourning, and they basically sought after the Lord to try and get it back. And I want to read you this story. It says here, "So the man of Kiriath Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord. They took it to Abinadab's house on the hill and consecrated Eleazar his son to guard the ark of the Lord. And it was a long time, 20 years in all, that the ark remained in Kiriath Jearim, and all the people of Israel mourned and sought after the Lord." So 20 years, the ark of the covenant was in Kiriath Jearim, and the people were mourning. And God chose Samuel and raised up Samuel at this point in time. And Samuel waited 20 years to be released into ministry, to say to the whole house of Israel, "If you are returning to the Lord with all your hearts, then rid yourself of the foreign god and the Ashtaroths, and commit yourselves to God and serve Him only, and He will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines." So the Israelites put away their Baals and Ashtaroths and served the Lord only. You see, the Lord doesn't care. It doesn't see what man sees. The Lord doesn't care about how much money you have, what your status is. When you introduce yourself tonight, I don't know whether anybody introduce themselves, say, "Okay, this is my name, I am Dr. So-and-so, and my job is I am a surgeon." Why do people introduce themselves this way? Because that is what man cares about, their status, their jobs, what car you drive, where you stay, what party you were seen at. But God doesn't care about all that. It says that if you want the Ark of the Covenant to come back to Israel, turn to the Lord with all your hearts and rid yourselves of the foreign gods. And the Bible has a lot to say about the issues of the heart. And Proverbs 4:23 says, "Out of the heart springs the issues of all your life. Tend to the state of your heart with all diligence. Seek the Lord with all your heart. Serve God with one heart." And there was a person that God said was a man after God's heart. His name was David, King David. And David was a rotten person. He made so many mistakes. He murdered, he committed adultery, he saboted his friends. But yet, God said that he was a man after His heart. And God chose David, His servant, and took him out of tending sheep. He brought him to be the shepherd, not of sheep, but His people, Jacob, of Israel, His inheritance. And David shepherded them with integrity of heart, and with skillful hands he led them. So tonight, understanding that God chose David because he had an upright heart, and not because of how well he could play, how much talent he was given by way of being able to play jazz chords, or how much training he has had in being able to sing and had recorded for studios, or even how talented he was in being able to win whatever awards. God didn't care about that. God cares about the fact that David had integrity of heart.